Okay, in this episode, I'm going to talk about Tabitha. I had made a video about her before, and apparently I deleted it by accident or something. But Tabitha, in 2020, these videos start off in 2020. She's a 32-year-old woman, and she grew up with both of her parents, and they have a big house, but they made it into a duplex. On the other side live both of her sets of grandparents. Okay, from her mother's side and her dad's side, and they share that area. Now, she when she was growing up, she loved to go shopping with them. They loved to, mainly the women went shopping, kind of a little bit traditional kind of thing, but they would go shopping, and she loved going with them. But she loved doing it, more. It wasn't so much of clothing or just what she wanted for herself. She loved buying stuff for other people, like her friends, even her family, and little things, and paying a lot of attention to what things cost. It was just her way of being. When she got older, she decided to make her own business, which was a delivery service. Okay, that's what she decided that she wanted to do. But she did get pregnant and have a child. They were not married, and she still lives with her parents. But it's kind of a common thing there, because the only people who can buy property there would be the people who are descendant from the original settlers, founders of the whole county, Victorson County. And the parents usually have one child, and they become, generational families, and they stay living together in Victorson County, Texas. And it's normal. There's nothing thought of it as anything wrong. Well, when she has a child, they section off a part for her with her child, and so she stays with them. She continues to live with them. All right. Okay. Now, when the story begins, it was like early 2020, and even before then, she had her business, and she would basically do the whole county. And she had her own, customers, her regular customers, and she would do that. But she would go to different towns in the county. It's a big county. It's kind of isolated from any big cities. They're very wealthy people. Most of them have lived there since it was settled many generations ago. And she has people that are her regulars, but they're spread out all over the county. And first she was doing it mainly herself with her brother. Not her brother, but the father of her child. And she would get him to do a few things, and she really didn't think to expand the business, because she had been doing it herself, and she didn't really expand it. She just enjoyed what she was doing. And when she would go to parts of the county, she lived more like in the far eastern side, and sometimes she would go to the northwestern side, and she would stay in what was then, they just call them the barns. Okay, and they're not just regular barns; they're really long barns, and they have apartments on them, and basically they're like farmers market. Well, they are farmers market, but more than just a farmers market. So she would stay. And, they have little, the end of them, they have little places, like little kitchenettes, I guess, attached to them for people who were, they were living outside of the county. But, it was for only people to sell their items who were, residents. But some of them would go to other places, like the big city. The only big city anywhere near there, it was like 2 hours outside of it. That they would still be able to come back, and they would stay in those barns. They did have hotels, but not really they weren't all that into that. Let's see, I'm looking at my notes here. And she would go a couple of days, days and nights with her daughter and her, the father of her daughter, and they would stay in the barns a couple nights of the week. And his name is Trey, and he's 28. Okay, she's 32, he's 28. I might have to change that in the story, but anyway. Now, her boyfriend, Trey wants to move to the big city. But Tabitha doesn't want to. She likes where she lives. She likes her. She loves living in Victorson County. She loves everything about it. And he's just really pushy and wants to move out. But she doesn't want to. Okay? Okay. Now, when she did go to college, and she learned things about business, and she attended university, the only university in Victorson County. And once she finished, some of her friends, they were all really into this thing of shopping for various, in various ways. Okay, they liked the thought of being like personal shoppers even. So they basically all studied business. And, well, after that, she was the only one to stay in Victorson County. All of her friends, they moved to the big city, and that's just what they call it, the big city. And but in the year 2020, after what's going on in the world today, still, all the members, all the people who were from Victorson County that had moved off were asked to come back. And now these are people who would have inheritances, and some of them were like members of the, they were from the original settlers, founders of the county, and some of them could be also part of the members, original members group. These were basically geeks. That's what they called them to start off with, was geeks. They just called themselves members, and their children, or they call themselves, their children named them. The children, who are adults, they call themselves 2.0s, and their children, the ones who actually have children, they call them the iGens. Okay, so they called everybody in that was anywhere around there to come back, to come back to the county because of what was going on. But that wasn't all. They also called them back in because there was a group of people who are they live in an area that was called the Outlaws. It was called that from the beginning when it was first settled, the town next to it, Bella, and that's where they had all the prisons and other things that just weren't allowed, in the other towns in the county, and that's what they called it, was the Outlaws. Well, the group of the computer people, the geeks, they had trouble with some of their members, and it goes back like 40 years or so, and who were trying to basically take over, and they were very wealthy. They were, the computer people from the beginning, that were really getting in social media and stuff like that, and programming and all this. And they opened businesses, they helped one another, with various kinds of businesses. And they became very wealthy. Well, the outcasts were ones who were just basically corrupt. And they wanted to take over. They wanted all the money for themselves and stuff like that. Well, they kicked them out, and then they wound up moving into, they lost, the outcasts, they lost their, rights to the place. They worked with the geeks worked with the leaders and the elders, and they just kicked them out, and they had to move to the Outlaws area. And so anyway, okay, let me get back to this. So everybody, all the people that had moved off that could were asked to come back, that owned property there. Now, they did have other places in Texas and various places in the United States and various places across the world, and they developed. The people who had moved in these other ones, they developed, they had lots of businesses, lots of property. It was very wealthy. They were very wealthy because they started young and helped one another out to start their own businesses and move off and start new businesses there and so forth. And so they could stay there if they were, because of what these the outlaws and had gotten the outcasts had gotten the outlaws all together, and they're trying still to, take over. They're very corrupt. They're trying to take over. And they're doing things like on their county. The county has their own website, and only people in the county can, or people who own property there can get in it, but not people from the outlaws and the outcast. They're basically trying to get in by marrying people into it, and like marrying somebody from the town they call the outlaws, and they're trying to marry people into the ones that are from the original settlers or the ones that are original members. So yeah, very much. But anyway, so that's another reason they had to come back. And everybody who could, or go to their nearest one, stay there, because they had a threat of fear of what was going to come down here and with it. So when her friends moved back, they basically moved back with their parents, after they moved to the big city, after attending university, graduating, they moved to the big city. They came back, and they stayed with their parents like people did. And so they were looking for jobs. So she then offered them to work for her, okay? And, for her services, because at that point, it had become that it was really needed. Okay. But because now so many people were coming back to Victorson County from other, from the big city, wherever they were, people who have homes there, sometimes they just go off for like one season and come back for another. And so they were coming back, and there was more need of someone to deliver, delivery service. So she hired her friends, and then went on from there. And let me see what else I have here. They had for various things, like some people for clothing, some people for household goods. There was also grocery. They didn't really have too much fast food, but they did have restaurants and, these things. And, variety. So she, each one had their own interests, her friends, and they took off from there. And none of them wanted to start their own business because they felt like once it was all over, they were going to move back to the big city and go on from there. But, well, things kept going. So, okay. Now, once all this started up, they started having what they called rolling lockdowns. Okay, and they were basically keeping people, away from others, like the whole county, and they would keep people away from others for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, to ensure that, hope that they're all clear. Then they would move them. And it was a whole big, the geeks, the main geeks, they got a program together of how they would know who could move and who could stay where and what they could do. And, as far as businesses, it was a huge undertaking. But they were, like, many members were the original geek squad kind of thing. But, geek members. And, this was their thing. This is much of what they did, was the programming and making, starting back when they were just hooking their computers to, together through, from home to home, not actually connecting them together, but usually calling into one another. They go way back, okay? So this was what they did, and they had a lot of people who studied at university too, learned a few new things, but they were mainly the creators, okay? But they did get their degrees and stuff like that, so, and they had many people doing it. But I'm reading my notes again. Okay, So she did all this, and there were areas when people were coming in, like all the cabins that were around the lake there. She was hired. Tabitha was her delivery service. They were hired to deliver to all the people that were coming in and were staying at the cabins. And a lot of these things were hush hush because of what else was going on with the outlaws and the outcasts. Okay, so she's a 2.0, I think, and yeah, I think she's considered 2.0. And her parents were the members of the original group. So she they asked her to focus on them, on the cabins, and the elders got into it, and the members. So she said she would, temporarily. Okay, she was only going to be there for a while until things got settled. But she became, the owner. She wasn't doing so much of the delivery anymore. She would have, she had her favorites, but she was now the business owner, and she had to hire staff. And it was very important to get a lot of it because of what was going on. And they did not feel like it was going to end there. In fact, this whole series started off with one character, the main character, started off being very futuristic. Not very. It was going to be, not very, but futuristic. It was, sort of. And it would jump from 2020 to 2027. Okay, at some point. Then I didn't do that. So, but it was still going on in 2027. But there's a lot more story to this. But anyway, I wanted to get this kind of intro out about her because like I said, I made one. Don't know what happened to it. I must have accidentally deleted it. And I don't know how that happened. But to go on from there, to tell the story of her job, what she does, but there's more to a story that becomes a bit of a mystery, a bit, and like I said, what the trouble with the outlaws and the outcasts. Yeah, there's much more to it than that. But also the things that she learned from the people that she, her friends that she hired, and what they were doing, what they were seeing in the big city, and so forth. Okay? That's enough from this part for now. Well, I'll talk in another video. Bye.